Good afternoon. This is Eric from Technical Support. Please welcome to this international session. Distinguished delegates, for the presenters, please use a headset or earphones and otherwise speak as close as possible into the microphone for the interpreters. And for the use of interpretation, you can click on the interpretation globe and select your language, which for today is interpretation from and into French, English, and Spanish. If you need technical support, please go to the chat panel and click on MTV support, and we'll be happy to help you out. Good luck with your meeting. I will now hand over the floor to the moderator to open the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for this instruction. Hello, everybody. A very good afternoon, evening, and morning to all attending this UNCTAD side event at the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, entitled Accelerating Progress in Trade and Gender, New Policies and Data Development. My name is Mia Mikic, joining from Waikato University in New Zealand, and I have a pleasant task of moderating this session. We are excited to have so many participants around the globe, and as Eric explained, we have enabled interpretation in English, Spanish, and French, and I hope you will be using the language of your preference. So with that, I invite you to actually use it so that you can participate actively, and you can ask the questions in the question and answer channel at the bottom of your screen. As said, our conversation today is about the role of new policies and data in accelerating progress in trade and gender. We asked our panelists to reflect on how gender considerations are being progressively integrated into trade policy in their countries, and to explain about recent progress in producing better statistics about trade and gender. Speaking about statistics, let me just throw some recent numbers I came across that are useful to provide context for our discussion. First, number 12. That is the number of countries out of 190 countries which offer full legal equality between women and men. Then second number, 2.4 billion. This is the number of women of working age globally who are not afforded equal economic opportunities. There are 3.9 billion women altogether in the globe. So this is about 60% of women lagging behind men in terms of access to equal economic opportunities. So what is in the numbers? A lot. They bring awareness, transparency, accountability, and help in advocacy. And they tell us about missed opportunities, and that is the most important, about income not generated, trade not done, school not attended, and so on. So let me give you one more number 121. This is the number of WTO members out of total of 164 members supporting the Declaration on Gender and Trade Equality, with an objective to transform WTO as an institution and as a system of rules from gender blind into gender responsive. So with this, it's time for me to stop speaking and to let us turn to our speakers in our session. So it's my pleasure to invite our first speaker, Madame Isabelle Duran. Madame Duran has been a Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD since 2017. And in 2021, she also performed she was also Secretary General of UNCTAD from February to September. Now, of course, she is the fierce advocate of gender equality, but also in a more general context of inclusivity and environmental responsibility. She has been very heavily involved in all socioeconomic response of the United Nations to the pandemic, and has led the work of UNCTAD in this area. Before her UN life, She was a vice prime minister and senator of Belgium, as well as vice president of the European Parliament. So she comes with very rich experience in so many areas, and we are privileged to have Madame Isabelle Duran with us to open this session. Isabelle, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mia. Je vais parler en français. Voilà, je vous laisse le temps de vous connecter ou de prendre l'interprétation. Et donc, tout d'abord à tous, bonjour et bonne journée, où que vous soyez dans le monde. Et d'abord, vous signaler que, de notre point de vue, à la CNUSET, nous pensons que pendant longtemps, et pendant trop longtemps, le commerce a été considéré comme neutre du point de vue du genre, et le lien entre le commerce et le genre n'a pas été considéré comme un sujet de discussion dans les forums commerciaux. C'était une erreur, et heureusement, les choses commencent enfin à changer. Il y a une nouvelle volonté de la communauté commerciale d'aborder les questions d'égalité des sexes et d'autonomisation économique des femmes dans le discours, dans les délibérations, y compris au sein de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Il y a une évolution positive et elle permet de mieux comprendre la dimension genre du commerce et de concevoir des politiques commerciales dont les résultats soient plus inclusifs et donc aussi permettant plus de gains liés à la libéralisation du commerce. Mais ce qui importe, c'est que les politiques et instruments commerciaux tiennent vraiment compte de la dimension de genre dès le départ. Le genre ne peut pas être une question que l'on traite après coup. Alors, il existe des signes assez encourageants sur le front des accords commerciaux et de la visibilité, de la reconnaissance des questions de genre dans les politiques commerciales. Beaucoup d'accords commerciaux bilatéraux et régionaux font explicitement référence au genre, et ça a augmenté au cours de la dernière décennie. Par exemple, l'accord de libre-échange de 2016 entre le Chili et l'Uruguay a été le premier accord de libre-échange à inclure un chapitre sur le genre. Et aujourd'hui, on a environ 83 accords commerciaux régionaux et bilatéraux qui comprennent au moins une disposition qui mentionne explicitement le genre ou les femmes. Dans le cadre du processus de négociation de la phase 2 de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, il y a aussi un protocole sur les femmes dans le commerce qui sera élaboré afin de soutenir la participation entière des femmes à l'intégration commerciale continentale. Mais il reste à voir quelle attention sera accordée à la mise en œuvre. C'est bien d'avoir un chapitre genre dans les accords commerciaux et partout, mais il faut aussi veiller évidemment à leur mise en œuvre. Et c'est vrai que la façon dont ces questions de genre ont été intégrées dans les accords varie, mais nous sommes définitivement sur la bonne voie. Les politiques commerciales inclusives sont également un moyen pour favoriser une égalité des sexes plus générale et de soutenir une plus grande autonomie économique des femmes. Si je prends les chiffres du Forum économique mondial, il faudrait normalement 136 ans pour combler le fossé mondial entre les sexes. Bon, c'est clair que nous n'allons pas attendre 136 ans. C'est beaucoup trop. La CNUSET contribue donc à sa mesure à combler ces écarts. Elle aide ses pays membres à rendre leur politique économique plus sensible aux questions de genre. Nous proposons des travaux d'analyse, des cours en ligne, toute une série d'activités de renforcement de capacité, telles qu'un soutien sur mesure aux femmes des micro et petites entreprises qui travaillent dans les zones frontalières et qui se lancent dans le commerce électronique. Et puis surtout, et j'y viens, nous voulons fournir de meilleures données pour éclairer l'élaboration des politiques. Parce que jusqu'à présent, les données n'ont pas été systématiquement ni collectées ni produites, des données sur la manière dont les femmes et les hommes participent au commerce international ou la manière dont ils sont affectés par le commerce. Alors, ça limite évidemment l'élaboration de politiques parce que c'est impossible de fonder une politique sans aucun élément de données. Et c'est pourquoi il est important qu'on puisse rencontrer ce problème de manque de données. Et ça peut être un moyen utile d'ailleurs là où il n'y a pas de débat sur la question du genre, si on a des données, on peut démontrer qu'il y a un problème ou une inégalité. Et à l'inverse, la question des données est un outil pour évaluer la progression des actions qui ont été menées. Donc, nous devons investir dans les données sur le genre dans le commerce si nous voulons avoir un commerce plus égalitaire, nous devons disposer de plus de données, nous devons aussi informer les décideurs, les parlementaires via ces données pour qu'ils puissent combler le problème. Le problème, c'est qu'il n'existe pas de variable directe liée au sexe dans les statistiques du commerce international. Il n'y a rien dans ce domaine-là. Mais il y a d'autres moyens. Et depuis 2018, un projet que la CNUSET a mené aide les pays à relier les données statistiques nationales pour évaluer le genre dans le commerce. Et comment fait-on? Eh bien, ce système permet d'utiliser et de combiner les données existantes recueillies par les autorités statistiques sur le commerce, mais de les relier avec les questions d'égalité de sexe dans l'éducation, de les relier avec ce qui existe comme données en termes d'accès aux ressources productives, en termes de participation des femmes et des hommes à l'économie et à la main-d'œuvre, ainsi que leurs emplois. Et la combinaison ou la liaison de ces données existantes est une bonne alternative en attendant que l'on puisse vraiment disposer de données désagrégées par genre dans le commerce. Donc, on ne peut pas croire qu'il faut attendre encore une dizaine d'années pour avoir cette architecture statistique. Il y a des moyens, et nous l'avons mis en œuvre dans ce projet, de relier les données existantes pour avoir une meilleure vision sur la question du genre. Donc, grâce à nos recherches, par exemple, nous savons qu'en Géorgie, une meilleure égalité des sexes dans la propriété et la gestion des entreprises peut contribuer à l'émancipation économique des femmes parce que les entreprises commerciales détenues par des femmes emploient plus de femmes et donc offrent un écart salarial moins important entre les hommes et les femmes. Les statistiques de genre dans le commerce peuvent également aider à analyser l'impact sexué du COVID-19. Par exemple, toujours dans les données de la Géorgie, elles révèlent que l'emploi des femmes dans les entreprises exportatrices et importatrices a davantage diminué que celui des hommes en 2020 par rapport à 2019. En outre, les entreprises détenues par des femmes ont subi des pertes d'emploi plus sévères. De telles données seront également bientôt disponibles pour le Cameroun, le Kenya, le Sénégal, le Zimbabwe. Donc, vous voyez qu'avec parfois un matériel qui n'est pas directement des données désagrégées de genre en matière de commerce, on peut évaluer quelle est la situation et par exemple, comment les femmes ont payé un lourd tribut en matière de commerce dans le cadre des conséquences du Covid-19. De meilleures capacités et données statistiques peuvent aussi alimenter des outils analytiques de politique commerciale. Nous avons par exemple créé une boîte à outils à la CNUSET sur le commerce et le genre. C'est une boîte à outils qui offre un cadre pour évaluer ex ante l'impact des réformes commerciales sur les femmes. Avant même de les mettre en œuvre, quels seront l'impact sur les femmes des réformes en matière de commerce? Cette boîte à outils a été utilisée pour évaluer l'accord de partenariat économique entre l'Union européenne et la communauté d'Afrique de l'Est. Et on a constaté qu'elle affecterait plus spécifiquement les femmes kenyanes. L'Union européenne l'a également utilisée dans son évaluation de l'impact sur le développement durable de l'accord d'association Union européenne-Chili. Alors, il est certain qu'on peut faire beaucoup avec de meilleures données sur le genre dans le commerce. Ce n'est que le début du voyage. Il est tardif, mais enfin, au moins, il est là. Et nous sommes impatients de développer ce travail en consultation et en engagement avec vous, les parties concernées. Et en ce sens, j'espère que nous pourrons poursuivre une excellente collaboration entre des organisations comme la CNUSET qui font de l'analyse et du travail d'expertise sur les données et vous qui êtes sur le terrain ou en tout cas acteurs du commerce et du développement sur le terrain. Merci de votre attention.
Sorry, having to unmute myself. So thank you very much, Madame Duran, for this very nice setting the scene for today's conversation. And thank you for pointing to positive examples and some new numbers that I can take on board, like 83 agreements with explicit gender mention or provisions, and I think you said 163 years of waiting to close the gap. That's too long. We can't do that. But it's promising to understand how we really make great progress in terms of collection of data and statistics. And we'll hear later a little bit more about that in this session. So I hope you can stay with us, and maybe I can call upon you after other speakers have spoken to say a few remarks at the very end. So next, I would like to turn to the two speakers that we have invited to provide policy-making perspectives from the point of their own countries. So we have two speakers from one from Rwanda and one from Canada. And I would like to first introduce them very, very briefly because we are quickly running out of time. So I'm seeking forgiveness from the speakers because I'm going to really summarize their very rich bios into 2 sentences, and then I will ask them to speak one after the other. So we first have Mr. Ildefonse Musafiri, who is a senior economist currently working as executive director of the Strategy and Policy Council in the Office of the President. He also serves as board director of the National Bank of Rwanda since 2018, and he is a honorary senior lecturer at the University of Rwanda College of Business and Economics. And of course, his rich research portfolio contributes to the reason why we really want to hear from him. Our second policy maker perspective speaker is Ms. Georgina Wainwright Kemdirim. She's the senior official from Global Affairs Canada, and I think she's the face of what we know under the name of gender-based analysis plus, and of course the face of Canadian negotiation of all these wonderful FTAs that also Isabel have mentioned. She works on both negotiation and implementation side, and it will be really exciting to hear from her as well. But let me start with Ildefonse, you first. Rwanda has, come to the status of being recognized as a role model in the international arena as far as gender equality and women's empowerment are at stake. Other countries in your region and globally are considering following the Rwandan example. So what were the main positive forces that allowed the country to move in this direction, especially as far as women's participation in trade? And what were the obstacles that needed to be overcome? And if you can share with us some concrete examples so that people can sort of take them away and try to find the parallels in their own environments on how women's participation in regional and international trade is being supported from your workplace. So floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mia. I start first of all thanking the conveners of this side event for allowing me to take part in the conversation. And I thank UNCTAD efforts to mainstream gender in trade. I also thank the remarks made by the Deputy Secretary General, which were actually to the point. Mia, to respond to your questions, let me maybe mention a few things. First, I will start by the allocation of the president he made, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, President Kagame, the tweet he wrote on the 8th March 2022, which is still even on the web during the International Women's Day. He said, equality is right, not a favor. That means we must challenge ourselves to do even more and better to ensure that the next generations of our daughters and granddaughters inherit a nation where their aspirations have no limits. That's the end of the quote. So that was maybe, and then to respond to your first question, where you are asking which policies are behind that. And this is ancient in the political leadership, the vision of the president. The effort has been made since the beginning of his term to position gender equality within the national priorities, and that make sure that there is a gender responsiveness to the development. If you have been following about our country, even our constitution of 2003, which was amended in 2015, it stresses gender equality by conferring at least 30% of positions to women in decision-making organs. And that's, we have been trying to work about it since 2003 until now. We are making sure we reach this goal as constituted in the constitution. Of course, that's the positive perspective, that's the vision, and that's the reality of the political party in power, which is RPF, Rwanda Patriotic Front. And that has, I would like to highlight this with a few facts from then to now, which is my second point I want to make. I would say that Rwanda today is ranked 7th globally in the Global Gender Index. That means we have closed about 80% of its overall gender gap. We have the Finiscope survey of Rwanda in like year 2020. We try to show that the gender gap is keeping narrowing within 32% of women who are today financially included. That's compared to 93% in males, but at least we are almost there, and we are still working toward to narrowing more the gender barrier. So if you look at now something we have made, another fact which is very interesting, because of this stereotypes that have been in most African countries, of course, including Rwanda a long time ago, it's about the land, the barriers in the land legislation and the land ownership. Normally, in the tradition, land women were not allowed to inherit or own land. But now, we are the only country in Africa that try to register all land. And the way you do it, the having land is now registered, the names are both printed on the land title for the couple, men and women, 50-50%. That means in Rwanda, in a family, the husband cannot sell a land without 100% consent of the wife. So that also has facilitated women to access loans from financial institutions and engage in income generating activities. We have entrepreneurship survey and entrepreneurship policy development that has been developed in 2020, where we are now make sure that we are creating an entrepreneurship spirit among women, and not only women, but also youth and also people living with disabilities, to be more inclusive. Again, when you look at these finance-related matters, you know, women has been always indicated by the lack of access to finance. In Rwanda, we have facilities that enhance access to loans. For example, we have the Business Development Fund that just try to provide a guarantee to women. We have a Women Guarantee Fund under this Development Business Fund, where at least 70% of credit guarantee is given to women within grant of 50% of total loan. So at that, we make sure that women entrepreneurs and SMEs, they obtain the loan without a collateral. And so far, since we started like 10 years ago, around the 3.4 billion Rwanda in France has been given to women in terms of loan. We have also the mobile penetration, and now we are trying to make sure that women are being more digital inclusive, where 80% of women have mobile phone, and they can use this phone to expand their trading opportunities, to facilitate access to rapid market information. And again, they can, with these tools, they can increase access to financial services. So these are the few facts that we can mention today, among others, that to show that the political leadership that of the President Paul Kagame, and that has been even printed in the Constitution and going through around the implementation in both government and the private sector is bearing fruit. Of course, the point number 3, this has come with how to overcome some obstacles, as you asked. So one is the unpaid care work. So we have to break this barrier. Women were mainly in a household unpaid work, which was not rewarded, was considered, but now I have a negative gender norms, stereotypes, which are the key reasons that have been limiting gender participation in businesses and in product activities, including trade. Second, it was capacity breeding. And that was a very huge barrier because traditionally they need to go to school. Now, with the new reforms in education for all, we make sure that not women, our daughters are not only destined to work from home, but also they're destined to go to school and make sure they become big women and strong women for the future who can also lead in the public institutions today and tomorrow. Lastly, you asked how are we try to support the participation, women participation in regional and international trade. I have just some few examples, like two. One is in Rwanda, we have a project that called the Great Lakes Trade Facilitation Project. This is a project, women in beneficiaries, women account more than 70% of their business. Some interventions of the project are construction with the cross-border markets. And when we talk about cross-border markets, maybe you understand we have the second busiest cross-border market in Rwanda, and one between Rwanda and DRC on Goma and Rubavu, this is respectively. But we are now developing the cross-border markets so that our people in the neighboring districts with the DRC, Rusizi, Karongi, Rubavu, and Nyamasheke, they benefit with improved services. And when we develop this, because we know that women are the most involved in this cross-border trade, and in addition that we are developing something that maybe, which is new and unique maybe for Rwanda, we are developing early childhood development centers, because they come with their kids, they come with their baby, their children, and we care about also the life of their mothers. And when we construct early childhood development centers where babies will be taken care of, while the mothers are busy with this cross-border, they will stay in the center. In the morning, the mother will want to do business, go into this cross-border trade. At the end, they come, they pick up their kids at the end of the day, while they have been taken care of emotionally, nutritionally, and so forth. So then we are trying to make sure that we serve the current generation of women traders as well as the future generation that are coming with us.
Thank you so much. Thank
There's
you
something
so
we are
much.
doing on COVID. We're also facilitating women on dealing with the COVID challenges. What we are trying to group them into cooperatives to make sure that we didn't break the trade because of the COVID challenges. So this is how we are doing this, and the small markets were constructed, and we adopt a cargo aggregation system to ensure the back shipment of goods, so that people can gain income within limited movement within COVID. So thank you. That's what I can say on that.
Thank you so much. I am aware that you might need to leave us before the end, so that's why I have given you the time of your second question as well, so that we stay on track with our very, very tight timeline. Georgina, I think we would want to hear from you everything that you can fit into 4 minutes that's related to this fantastic approach of GBA plus, and whether we should expect something that will be called GBA plus plus, and what is all that about. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mia, and thanks for the questions that you've previously provided to me, which didn't mention plus plus, but it's a good question. I'm going to think about that. But I'm really honored to be here today and appreciate the invitation from UNCTAD and to be joined also by these leaders in trade and gender. So thank you very much. So your first question was, what drove Canada to adopt this approach of applying GBA plus to FTAs? I'm going to use some quick acronyms here. ACS plus en français. I would say there was a confluence of very important events that were occurring 6 to 7 years ago in Canada and globally, such as public protests against trade. This was very concerning for Canada because, 65% of our GDP depends on global trade. Of course, the Sustainable Development Goals were out there and all countries have to work to achieve them, including gender equality. Canada had been doing research about women-owned businesses here and women's propensity to export, and the numbers weren't as good as men. So this was also a driver of our work. But you know, when our new government was elected of Prime Minister Trudeau in 2015, they made gender equality and women's economic empowerment a top priority. And we had a whole gender results framework established with 6 goals for Canada, and trade was a big one of those. In order to achieve our gender equality results in Canada, the government made gender-based analysis plus applicable to all government policies. So this was key. And you know, at Global Affairs Canada, where I work, this led to the development of our feminist foreign policy, our feminist international assistance policy, and also eventually our inclusive approach to trade, which I like to call our feminist trade policy, although that's not the official name, that's just what I call it. So among the objectives for our inclusive approach to trade is to ensure that benefits of trade are more widely shared with underrepresented groups, but including women. So our approach is very much evidence-based through the collection and analysis of gender disaggregated data and extensive and inclusive stakeholder consultations. Clearly, GBA plus of FTAs became essential to deliver on our inclusive approach to trade. And in 2018, in fact, the government mandated that all trade agreements would be subject to GBA plus. So we really had to get our act together and figure out how are we going to do this and to bring that GBA lens to a full trade agreement to all the model chapters. So we have done that, and it is now standard practice to conduct GBA during trade negotiations and on a final agreement. We will be publishing very soon our initial GBAs of our trade agreements that we've just launched with the United Kingdom and Indonesia. In terms of ensuring that the results of GBA, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. So how to ensure that the results of GBA are reflected in our trade agreements? But we do take several steps, very systematic, which has basically 2 prongs, I would say. Firstly, we keep the GBA plus evergreen. This means that we regularly update it before each round of negotiations by integrating the results of a stock-taking approach after a trade negotiation to see what the results were from that round. And we also integrate any new data or evidence that has emerged, including results from new economic modeling exercises and other data collection. This involves working very closely with our Chief Economist's Office and our National Statistical Agency. We also provide ongoing training and analytical support for lead negotiators on their GBA plus of their chapters and help them integrate this into their negotiating strategy before each round. The second prong is very much focused on engaging with our trade negotiating partner, as we need a willing partner, of course, on the other side to deliver a gender responsive trade agreement. So we consider how our new proposals were received by our trade partner during the negotiations, and we try to consider how we can build understanding and buy-in of Canada's approach with them. To do that, of course, we have to bring the economic value, the trade value of these gender responsive provisions, to the attention of the partner country. In terms of what is missing of GBA plus, I would say some gaps are understanding better the gendered consumer effects of a trade agreement, as that would present a fuller picture of the benefits of trade agreements. To date, our focus has been very much on workers and business owners. I think understanding better supply chain effects on women is important, and also how trade affects not only the quantity of jobs created, but also their quality. For Canada, it is also very important to understand the effects of trade on the full diversity of people in Canada, such as the disabled, new immigrants, and sexually diverse people. That is what GBA Plus is all about. It's about putting people at the heart of decision-making in all their diversity. Also thinking more broadly beyond what is already underway in bringing a gender lens to the work of the WTO as indicated as a goal of the MC12 Ministerial Declaration, I think we could also bring GBA plus training to trade negotiators in all countries around the world through trade policy centers elsewhere. So I would say over the past more than 3 years, Canada has learned a lot as we apply GBA to trade agreements, but there's still more we need to do. This, I have to say, is not easy work, but it does inspire innovation, and ultimately it truly is worth it in terms of advancing gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you so much for introducing the approach, which has produced wonderful results, as we know, and it's actually now becoming a sort of a very widely used approach in assessment of FTAs, I have to say. And it's good to see this contrasting approach between countries like Rwanda that had to focus on land rights and to do the corrective from those ends, and to actually also look at operationalization in the export sector of how to help women, and you from the sort of top look at how to actually put gender mainstream into the provisions of FTA, and how to, what Isabel was talking in the in the beginning, very importantly, to put the policy first that would address gender issues rather than as an afterthought, and I think that is very important. I hope we can come back to that through the questions of the audience, but let me now do my job and continue with the session. So we will next have two speakers that will be speaking more from the technical point of view, and the use of collection, creation, and the use of new data and tools. And so we have two speakers. One hails from New Zealand, Phil Mellor, and the second one from Chile, Nelson Paredes. And so let me just also very quickly, with apologies, summarize their affiliation and achievements in 2 sentences. So Phil is the lead economist in the Trade and Economic Group of the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and he leads the ministry's research work on examining the impacts of trade and trade policy on economic, distributional, and environmental outcomes. And this comes under the umbrella strategy of New Zealand that is called Trade for All. And before, he was working with the New Zealand Treasury and in other various UK-based food manufacturing companies. Nelson Paredes is the head of the Trade and Data Department from Chile's Undersecretary of Trade, and he has more than 15 years of experience working on matters of export promotion and trade negotiation. And the last 5 years, he has worked in the analysis of the participation of companies led by women in Chilean exports. So let us first hear from Phil. I think both of our speakers now will have PowerPoints, so I will ask you to share your screen, Phil, and we can then proceed. Thank you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever in the world you may be. And thank you for this opportunity to speak today. So New Zealand has been doing some really interesting work in terms of building out our gender disaggregated trade data. And we've got a couple of approaches that we've been using. So, and I'll draw from insights from both of them. But the first approach has been a top-down approach, where we've been combining data from traditional sources like the national accounts, household labour force surveys, and so on, to build up a picture of the gender distribution of our trade. And then the second approach has been to use a really rich firm-level administrative data set to build up a bottom-up picture of those trading firms as well. And so that bottom-up approach gives us a pretty comprehensive picture of the trading firms in New Zealand and their distributional characteristics. So I'm going to share a couple of the insights from those sets of data. Let's go. Here we go. So the first will come as no surprise, and that is that women are underrepresented as workers in New Zealand's export sectors. So I think that's probably a fairly consistent story around the world. That same data also pointed to the size of the gender pay gaps in those sectors. So although New Zealand's gender pay gap has been coming down over time, sits about 9% now, it is higher in our export sectors and our tradable sector more generally than it is in other areas. So that's something of concern. And then finally, an insight from the bottom-up data that we drew upon. So we were able to look at the earnings, the wages that workers in both export firms earned relative to their peers and non-export firms in the same sector. And we can do this by gender as well. And so while both men and women benefited from being in an export firm, women received a lower premium for being in that export firm. So I guess putting all these data together, we can kind of build up a picture that both women are both underrepresented in terms of numbers in the labour force in our export sectors, but also they're receiving less of the benefits that flow from trade in those sectors. So there's at least two issues there that need to be addressed. This also flows into, or we can use the data to draw insights as well in terms of the decision-making of firms, or rather I should say those who are the decision makers. So our data, the firm level data, we can determine for a small subset of firms, the ownership, the gender of the owners of the firm. And here we see again, New Zealand goods exporting firms at least, women are very underrepresented in those. And the other angle is looking at leadership. And so we don't have a good way of telling who is a leader of the firm. So we proxy that by looking at the top paid employees of that firm. And I think, and that's what this chart here is showing, it's the number of women leaders and male leaders in firms across different firm size. And I think that the two clear things here are, one, that the number of firms where women are the majority of the leaders is very low. It's about 15% in New Zealand. And perhaps even more worryingly, the number of women leaders overall in our export firms is very low as well. So it's just under a quarter. So, and that will certainly be contributing to the gender pay gaps that I referenced before. So in terms of how we're using this, this data, there's a couple of good examples that we've got at the moment. We're starting to build this data into our analysis of free trade agreements. So for example, New Zealand and the UK have just signed a free trade agreement 2 weeks ago or so. And part of the analysis of that trade agreement, we combine this data with our traditional economic modelling through CGE modelling and so on to develop an assessment for how that agreement would impact on women. Good news, it was looking like it was benefiting women slightly more than men. So that was a good way of, closing the gap, even if it's just a small increment. I'm very pleased to say that that free trade agreement has a dedicated trade and gender chapter as well. The second area where we've been using this data is in a joint review that we've been doing with the OECD, looking at New Zealand's trade and gender settings. And so this data is fed into that review, and that's generated a whole host of policy insights, policy recommendations that we're now starting to look to implement. So they range from things at the high level in terms of what do you put into trade agreements, what gender provisions, gender chapters, so on, right through to more practical or tangible policy recommendations, such as how do you think about the composition of a trade delegation, for example. How do you structure that to make sure that women can participate? Even really mundane things like don't put the trade delegation in school holidays, for example. So that's just a few of the ways that we've been using the data. It's very much a learning journey for us. Every time we open up this data set, there's a whole bunch of extra questions that come out of it. So I think there'll be a lot more insights still to come from this data. Thank you. Oh, I think you're on mute, Mia.
Thank you. I've just noted I was muted. So, Nelson, Chile has been a pioneer in Latin America in moving towards more gender responsive trade policies, and we have heard already about the FTAs that Chile has been involved with. And you also collect data about women and trade, but your approach is different from what we just heard is being done in New Zealand. You actually use surveys about women who participate in export, and then you use those surveys to actually produce some collections of data. So can you please highlight some of the insights that you have learned from the surveys, and also similar to what Phil was saying, how is that used in the policy in the policy arena in terms of policy making or negotiation of the agreements? So floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Mía. Gracias por la invitación y la presentación. Buenos días a todos y todas. Voy a presentar nuestras investigaciones. Voy a compartir mi presentación. Bueno, nuestras investigaciones sobre género y comercio comienzan en el año 2017 con la necesidad de generar políticas públicas de asuntos de género y comercio basadas en evidencia estadística. Entonces, en colaboración con ProChile, el Servicio de Puestos Internos, el Servicio Nacional de Aduanas y nosotros, la Subsecretaría de Relaciones Económicas Internacionales, creamos en conjunto la primera radiografía a la participación de las mujeres en las exportaciones chilenas. Lo que nos permitió saber que eran 205 empresas, que son el 3% de las exportadoras del país, el 87% de ellas solo exportaban alimentos, 70% de ellas eran pequeñas y medianas empresas. Las tres primeras ediciones nos permitieron identificar factores que se repetían. La edición del 2017, 2018 y 2019 tenían muchos elementos en común o muchos resultados en común, como la baja participación dentro del total de empresas que exportan en Chile, una alta concentración en el sector de alimentos, prácticamente no exportaban servicios y la mayoría exportaba solo un producto o a un mercado. Entonces en el año 2019 tuvimos que decidir cómo optar por intervenir esta realidad y hacer un cuestionario, una encuesta, una entrevista, para saber por qué esta realidad era tan estática. Queríamos saber, o básicamente elaboramos una encuesta de barreras de género para la exportación en empresas lideradas por mujeres, para entender por qué las cifras eran tan estáticas y poder generar nuevas actividades para brindarle una ayuda más efectiva. En la encuesta evaluamos si sentían alguna discriminación en el proceso de exportación. Les preguntamos también cuáles eran las principales barreras que enfrentaban en la internacionalización y cuáles son las áreas donde más apoyo necesitaban. Una vez que compilamos todas sus respuestas y detectamos todas estas barreras, se decidió reformular el programa Mujer Exporta de nuestro organismo de promoción de exportaciones ProChile, con el objetivo de superar estas barreras mediante más capacitación y actividades de promoción de exportaciones enfocadas en sus necesidades. Fue el primer gran cambio que tuvimos que hacer para modificar esta realidad que en los números nos aparecía estática todos los años. Bueno, ¿qué avance hemos visto luego de 5 años de investigación sobre género y comercio? Yo creo que una de las principales es que el estudio ha dado una mayor visibilidad del rol de la mujer en el comercio exterior. Se ha creado conciencia de la baja participación de las mujeres en las exportaciones del país. Esto lo hemos distribuido a nivel nacional, a nivel regional, y las autoridades han tomado conciencia de la baja participación de las mujeres en las exportaciones. Bueno, esta mayor visibilidad de la brecha de género en las exportaciones también ha desencadenado la necesidad de estudios complementarios de mayor profundidad para conocer cómo interactúan nuestras empresas exportadoras, nuestras empresarias, con empresas de otros países. También una mejor segmentación de la oferta exportable del país, un mayor conocimiento de la interacción de nuestras empresarias con las aduanas, con los bancos, con la emisión de certificados y con los distintos programas de gobierno. Queríamos evaluar cómo era su interacción con cada una de las instancias o de la etapa del comercio exterior. De esta forma se cuenta con un mejor diagnóstico y es posible generar mejores decisiones de política pública. También en los últimos años hemos visto que más instituciones de gobierno han implementado programas de desarrollo exportador para empresas lideradas por mujeres. Ya no es solo nuestra Oficina de Promoción de Exportaciones ProChile, sino que se han sumado Corfo y Cercotec con proyectos para empresas lideradas por mujeres y que éstas inicien sus primeros pasos en la exportación, ya sea de forma directa o indirecta. Bueno, los resultados de nuestro informe han tenido un impacto, como hemos visto, a nivel nacional, pero también en cada región del país. O sea, nosotros todo lo que hacemos a nivel nacional luego lo desagregamos por las 16 regiones que tiene nuestro país, y esto nos permite focalizar la difusión y la discusión de los resultados en cada uno de los medios locales o con autoridades locales. Por ejemplo, aquí vemos un reportaje del diario Cachacobal de la región de O'Higgins, que destaca que su región cuenta con la segunda mayor cantidad de empresas lideradas por mujeres en las exportaciones del país. Así cada región puede tomar conocimiento de la situación. También luego de presentar los resultados de nuestro estudio a gobiernos regionales, algunas autoridades locales han decidido abrir programas específicos de apoyo para sus mujeres exportadoras. Por ejemplo, aquí vemos en pantalla un correo que nos envió la directora de la Oficina Regional de ProChile en la región del Maule, que nos dice que la información que entregamos fue fundamental para gatillar el interés del gobierno regional por apoyarnos con recursos para superar brechas de mujeres exportadoras. Es decir, efectivamente los datos pueden contribuir a tomar decisiones y facilitar el rol de la mujer en las exportaciones. Quizá el resultado más importante de todos es que luego de 5 años de realizar esta medición hemos visto que la cantidad de empresas exportando lideradas por mujeres se ha más que duplicado y han crecido a una tasa del 19% anual, muy por sobre la tasa de crecimiento de las exportadoras totales de Chile, que ha caído en un 2%. O sea, de 205 empresas lideradas por mujeres exportando que teníamos en el año 2016, pasamos a 484 empresas en el año 2021. Sin ir más lejos, la semana pasada publicamos la 5ª edición de nuestro informe y el gran hallazgo fue que 125 empresas lideradas por mujeres exportaron por primera vez en el año 2021, y esto nos da señales de que de alguna forma todo el trabajo que han hecho los distintos organismos de gobierno ha permitido fortalecer el rol de la mujer en las exportaciones del país. Eso. Muchas gracias, esa es mi presentación.
Sorry, it takes me a second to unmute. So thank you very much for these two very short, unfortunately, but still comprehensive presentations on what is being done and how the information is collected and produced and then used in policy making. I think it's very informative and insightful for our listeners, and I see that there are already questions asked. Maybe I can ask our speakers to look at the question and answer and answer maybe directly in writing to some of very concrete questions, like, for example, Nelson, what you have in terms of how the firms are selected for the survey, etc. I will go back to the audience questions. We have very short period of time left. Because UNCTAD is also has been working for a number of years very intensively on helping its members to understand how data can be used for policy making through various tools, etc. I think it will be useful for UNCTAD and the partners to hear from each one of you what support could UNCTAD provide in the field of policy analysis, data, and knowledge sharing to further support the development of gender-responsive trade policies from the perspective of your countries, of course. So let me start with Georgina first, and I would appreciate if you can cut your answers to 1 minute so that we can still go to some of the audience's questions. Thank you, Georgina.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mia. So just some quick thoughts on this. So you did talk about trade and gender chapters, and a key feature in trade and gender chapters are cooperation activities. So, you know, be great to have a sense of, evaluate the value of cooperation activities in real concrete terms. What are the benefits once we start implementing these chapters? I think the role of cooperatives and social enterprises for women in trade is really an important business model that we could consider and consider like the inclusive and sustainability and trade benefits of these business models for women in the developing world, but also in the developed world. There's a lot of work going on globally about the trade and development nexus, but what about the trade, development, and gender nexus? So what's the trade benefits of development with a gender lens? And what are the development benefits of trade with a gender lens? I think another area of analysis that UNCTAD might want to take on would be evaluating whether a gender transformative trade agreement has been achieved and whether we are achieving transformative outcomes in terms of jobs and economic activity, both in the developed and developing world. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Georgina. If I can go to Ildefonso, you are still here. That's very great. Can I go to you, and if you can give us your brief sort of perspective of what you expect UNCTAD to contribute to your efforts?
Thank you, Mia. First of all, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mia. And I think for the first thing that UNCTAD can support, as Deputy Director General Isabel mentioned, it's about data. So obtaining disaggregated data related to trade and gender. So that means even the data to enhance the policy making, so the availability of data is 100 to the continent, including in Rwanda. So then we are also implementing the gender safe certification program, where we are motivating the private sector to gender mainstreaming in different private companies. So and that's also, we are working with the NDP, but we don't mind also if UNCTAD come in to support that initiative. When our women are in trade, they need knowledge about e-commerce and digital infrastructure. This kind of cross-border interoperability will be also very mandatory. So the gender equality need finance and also capacity building to be assured to the private policymakers be able to assess, analyze gender mainstreaming in the sector. And lastly, if UNCTAD has tools or to increase awareness and engagement with men to break negative stereotypes toward the gender equality in women's economic employment, that will also be very much appreciated. And that will be also be a game changer that we still need. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Phil, may we hear from you, Phil?
Well, thanks, Mia. So I think one of the insights from our work is the analysis that we've done from a top-down methodology is married up quite well with the bottom-up methodology. And I know that not many countries have the access to the kind of, I guess, the very disaggregated data that we're fortunate to have access to. So I think a key role would be how do you, or just develop up guidelines on how you use that kind of top-down approach. How do you use the existing data sources in your national accounts, your GDP, and trade data, and your household labor force survey type data, and combining it with things like input-output tables. We've been able to develop quite a good understanding of the trade, the gender disaggregation of trade through those methods, and I think that would be very widely applicable and very easy for other countries, particularly developing countries where resources might be more constrained, to pick up those and still develop some really useful insights into the kind of the gender disaggregation of their trading sectors that can then feed into policy. So I think being able to, it'd be great to have the perfect disaggregated data, but finding out ways to make the most of the data that we already collect for a range of other reasons, and deriving some really useful policy insights from that data.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Phil, for that suggestion. I think is well noted. Nelson? May I call upon you? Yeah.
Muchas gracias, Mía. Creo que lo que hemos visto en los pasados
Yes.
5 años de edición es que nos falta todavía como desagregar el impacto de las mujeres en cargo de liderazgo, si es que contratan más mujeres, si es que los sueldos son más altos, si es que mejora el ambiente o el clima laboral para las mujeres dentro de una empresa exportadora liderada por mujeres. Pero es algo que hay que trabajar a nivel de organismos compiladores, porque nosotros, por ejemplo, en nuestra subsecretaría o en ProChile estamos al final, no compilamos datos. Entonces sería ideal si UNTAC, como decía Phil, puede generar guías para que los organismos compiladores desagreguen más el dato o compartir buenas experiencias de lo que está pasando en otros países como Canadá, pero con los organismos compiladores directamente. O sea, como en el principio de la cadena de compilación de datos, hay que trabajar mucho en cómo desagregamos más y cómo compartimos esa información.
Well, okay. Okay. So, sorry. We did lose your audio a little bit, so I didn't know whether you're finished or we just lost you. So thank you for that, Nelson. So I have just gotten a permission from the organizer to go 5 minutes over time. And we do want to hear from Isabel for at least a couple of minutes before we do close. So there is one interesting question that, again, I will read it as it is being posed, and then ask a volunteer perhaps to answer. And it says, what can we learn from these current country experiences? And should we try to develop globally comparable indicators of gender and trade for policy purposes? And I think some of the attempts already exist in that. I think they were also cited here with respect to how countries go up and down on those rankings, etc. But I think or let me rephrase that question, what would be the role of UNCTAD actually in compiling these country experiences and then feeding into lessons learned in terms of best practices, etc. I think there is a great scope for UNCTAD to be doing that, and it's already doing in terms of what the national policies that they are helping design. But if I may hear from any of you on this aspect, please.
Mia from Canada.
Yes,
I could just
yes.
jump in. I'm not a data expert at all, but it is certainly a really important dimension for making progress, as the economists on the line have mentioned today. One thing that I'm struck by is there's certainly different capabilities depending on your level of development in terms of the ability to collect a really substantial gender disaggregated data. So I would just wonder if the expert economists could sort of advise, what is that minimum level of data that is required to get a full picture of the story of women in trade and women-owned businesses and their propensity to export. And this would tell an important story. And I think the other thing that is important to recognize in all this work, of course, data is so important, but if you don't have data, it shouldn't hold you up in doing what you know is right? Because women's participation in the economy as workers or business owners is just so important. So again, I think, some qualitative evidence to support this rationale, because that might be easier to get in the short term, because we just don't want to hold things up, because we know there's a challenge. So let's get moving on it. So those would be my 2 quick comments, and I'm not an expert. Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. So I will have to apologize to the other participants from the audience who posed very interesting questions that we will not have time to actually directly respond to them. But if they have left the email or something, we might do that after the session. Final remarks, Isabelle, from you, if I may.
Merci. Donc, très rapidement. J'ai écouté avec attention les expériences des différents pays et je pense que, en fait, les statistiques, ce n'est pas une science exacte. Les données, ce n'est pas quelque chose qu'on peut construire en chambre. On doit le construire aussi avec ce que vous apportez de l'expérience de vos pays. Et j'ai noté combien, ce que disait le représentant du Chili, l'importance d'un bon diagnostic de la situation. Comme je disais, moi, je ne suis pas une spécialiste en données, mais mes spécialistes écoutent. Je pense qu'il faut que nous construisions ensemble les outils, à la fois une bonne architecture au niveau national pour les statistiques, mais aussi parfois des choses qui sont, comme l'a dit le représentant du Rwanda, l'enregistrement de la propriété de la terre. C'est extrêmement important. C'est une donnée qui apparaît pas liée au commerce et pourtant elle est extrêmement importante pour les entrepreneurs. Donc vraiment, ce panel révèle l'importance que vous sur le terrain et nous à Genève, essayons de construire du matériel ou des outils qui peuvent être redistribués à tous. C'est ça notre travail. Donc merci en tout cas pour votre contribution à ce que vous avez apporté. On lira avec attention aussi les questions sur le chat, de manière à pouvoir vous assister ou partager des expériences à la fois quantitatives mais aussi qualitatives. Parce que je pense que la mise en œuvre aussi des chapitres genre, etc., il faut y être très attentif. Il y a parfois une mode à mettre du genre partout, et puis on met du genre dans les textes, mais on ne met jamais du genre ou pas assez du genre dans les faits. Et donc, je crois qu'on doit être très attentif aussi à ce que l'implémentation soit respectée. Donc, merci pour ça. Sachez que nous sommes à votre disposition. N'hésitez pas à prendre contact avec nous et nous allons travailler ensemble.
Thank you so much, Isabel. And what you said last, I think it's extremely important that we have to actually always look for the impact and for the results. And without having quantitative data, we will not know that. But then again, we need to support these quantitative analysis with qualitative information, and I think all type of approaches in collecting the data are valid and important. And so also the partnership and collaboration between different stakeholders is extremely important. So as always, we run out of time whenever we have a great topic as we had tonight. At my time, afternoon at your time, we simply run out of time because there are so many things always to discuss, and so many fantastic achievements from countries around the world. We have 4 continents represented here, and we have learned a lot about what can be done when there is political will, first and foremost as well. We should not forget that, but also when we allow also women to get involved in policy making and decision making from micro to the sort of national high levels. So with this, I would really like to warmly thank, of course, Isabel. Thank you so much for being with us. I know you are extremely busy these days, actually always, but particularly during the session, but also for our fantastic speakers, and for sharing the knowledge and experiences from their work and their countries. Of course, to the audience, because they do the other part of the quality of the webinar is always due to the questions that they prompt us asking. Thank you to interpreters. They have had tough job speaking very quickly to what we wanted to say, and of course, without UNCTAD's team, led by Simonetta and included the whole team there, we wouldn't be able to actually do this at all. So with my thanks, and I hope we can stay connected and continue working on this crucial actually topic, because as we know, this is good economics, good business, and good politics when women involved. So with that, I wish you all the best, and please stay safe and healthy and happy. And I wish you the productive rest of the day, or to Phil, hopefully you will get some sleep before your workday starts again. Okay, thank you so much, all. It has been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Pleasure to meet you
Bye.
all. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.